And welcome everyone to NCVLI's Rise Project annual Facebook Live series. It is National Crime Victims' Rights Week, which is an incredible event that commemorates every April of every year. This year we start today, April 24th, and we go through April 30th with events all over the country. The 2022 NCVRW theme is Rights, Access, Equity for All Victims. This year's theme underscores the importance of helping crime victims and survivors find their justice by enforcing victims' rights, expanding access to services, and ensuring equity and inclusion for all. We will be here live today, Wednesday and Friday this week, to speak with our partners across the country, including some of our Rise Project legal clinics, to discuss this year's theme and the ways our partners are ensuring access, equity, and rights for all crime victims. The National Crime Victim Law Institute fields thousands of technical assistance requests annually and encourages everyone to seek our expertise anytime you are facing challenges or concerns related to asserting and enforcing victims' rights. We are always here to help. My name is Jennifer Storm. I am a consultant with the National Crime Victim Law Institute, and I am so excited to be here with one of my favorite humans on the planet, and that is the amazing and incomparable Ann Seymour. And before I let you talk, I'm going to talk to you a little bit. So Ann is in Washington, D.C., really the hub of a lot of our victims' rights events this week, but also the founding of our victims' rights platform, of our laws, of so much of the advocacy and work that has gone into this incredible cause. And Ann Seymour has been at the forefront of advocating for crime victims. I have known this incredible, brave, wonderful, courageous human for a long time. She has been one of my mentors and advisors, and really oftentimes the first call I make when I am struggling with an issue, or if I need to have fun. So, Ann, thank you. Just thank you for taking the time to be here today. Thank you for all of the work that you have done historically, what you're still doing, what I know you're going to continue doing. So just thank you so much for being here.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I love NCVLI, and this is my first Facebook Live. So thanks for breaking me in, sister.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Ann and I have had the good fortune of traveling all across the country, talking about victims' rights and working in spaces like corrections and parole and pretrial and nonprofit arena, government arena. So you name it, Ann has seen it. And we're going to have kind of a fun conversation today where we get to hear a little bit about the reasons why Ann has done the work she's done, why she continues to do it, how she came into this work. So here's a fun question. In one word, tell us how you felt on your first day working in victim services.
I didn't have to think twice about that question. I felt fortunate and still do.
Tell us a little bit about why. What made you feel that way?
I was very, very young. I was working in the California legislature and did not want to do that kind of work anymore. And I had the opportunity to interview with the National Office of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I remember thinking it was a free trip to Dallas to go see which I did. But going to the National Office of MAD, where I met my original mentor, Janice Harris Lord, and getting the job as Kenny Leitner's assistant, and that evolved into kind of a public affairs position in May of 1984. And a couple days later, I was in Washington, D.C. 5 weeks later, I was in the Rose Garden with President Reagan as he signed the 21 drinking age bill. It's still considered to be the fastest passing major public policy initiative, I think, in our entire history. So 5 weeks from get-go to passage of the 21 drinking age bill. And I think for me, it was also along that 5-week path, meeting so many victims and survivors of drunk driving crashes and understanding and beginning to learn about the impact of such violent crimes on survivors. I did not come with a victim advocacy background, and I learned quickly and succinctly about the power of the personal story, which today is still, as you know, Jen, the driving force of our entire field.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, just kind of starting out in your career and then ending up in the Rose Garden just weeks later. I mean, talk about a trajectory.
Yeah.
I mean, so tell me, so it's been, how long ago was that?
So in a couple of weeks, I will be celebrating 38 years as a national advocate for crime victims and survivors. Yeah.
So 38 years. And why do you keep coming back? What holds you firmly steeped in this work?
Well, I want to say over the almost 40 years I've been involved, we've had so many amazing accomplishments. But I'm going to quote Bruce Springsteen, one step up, two steps back. And no matter how much we do, as you know, as everyone knows, there's always much more to do. And so for me, it's the challenge of what lies ahead. It's the opportunity to make sure that survivors and advocates are engaged in things like responding to mass violence, restorative justice, justice reform initiatives, to make sure that survivors always have a place at the table, not as a, oh, we have to have a survivor on board, but really in a meaningful way that can help guide public policy into the future. And I wake up every day with, 10 sticky notes on my bathroom mirror, like stuff that has to happen right now. And that's why I stay engaged, at least for a couple more years.
Yes. Well, and as you kind of noted, with any movement, the pendulum swings often, right? What I've always respected and valued about you is that regardless of where that pendulum was going, you were always bobbing and weaving with inserting survivors' voices across the entire continuum. So thank you for that. And thank you for all those sticky notes, because I know that you are working tirelessly every day. So are you able to share a story with us? So we often hear a lot of tragedy, right? Victims and survivors, obviously their experiences are steeped in trauma and tragedy. And this work can be really hard and really heavy. And so you've been here for 38 years, and that's hard work that you've done, and a testament to the passion that you have for this work. What's a story that comes to mind that brings you joy, that helps you wake up and say, this is why I'm doing this? Not that the hard work's also not really good, but think about something that just brought you pure joy.
I really appreciate that question. And I can say, because I now work half-time with the National Mass Violence Victimization Resource Center, we work closely with NCVRW, and Meg was just on our mass violence podcast, but we have forums of both our stakeholders who advise us, but also of the good folks out there who run and administer resiliency centers. In the aftermath of mass violence, resilience centers are created with support from the Office for Victims of Crime. And most recently, we started another forum of nonprofit organizations, very often started by mass violence survivors themselves. So we meet monthly with each of these forums, and it's a lot of meetings, but I have to tell you, every Tuesday and Thursday, once a month, I wake up going, it's forum day, because these are people who we can impart the wisdom of the National Mass Violence Victimization Resource Center to them. They give us so much back based on their experiences of not just working with victims and survivors, but also communities that are impacted by mass violence. And I just think it's a model. When we take time to, offer what we know to folks who are doing the frontline work, but listen to them, as you know, I'm preaching to the choir, it really makes a difference. And the outcomes have just been really phenomenal to help future resiliency centers. We've had 3 new folks join our forum just in the past couple of weeks because of all the mass violence that's been going on. I get joy from that.
Yeah. And I can tell anyone, if you're ever at a conference and Ann Seymour is there, I guarantee you will smile, because the one thing I've always appreciated about you, Ann, is that when I'm in your physical space or virtual space, it's empowering and you bring fun. Like, you have always found this brilliant way of bringing light into such dark spaces. And I value that. And whether it's, funny hats and us dressing up and, making a scene at a reception to make people look at us and realize that, hey, the victim advocates are in the room. It's this really wonderful way that people wouldn't necessarily think to have victim services be seen in that way. And you do that beautifully.
We have to, because the work is so difficult, and victim service providers wake up every day sometimes dreading the 24 hours that lies ahead. I'm being honest, I do. And so when we have the opportunity to cut loose a little bit and to learn about our peers as people, not just victim advocates, and about their families and their lives and have fun. I think that's one of the things that has kept me from burning out. And I know you too. I'm not speaking for you, but I know that your plate is pretty full up too. So
well, thank you. So we've talked a little bit about some, the joy and the reasons why we're here. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the full trajectory of victims' rights. It is still kind of a new field, right? You've been in it as long as it's really been a field. So can you talk a little bit about just that brief history and why has it taken us so long?
Well, I appreciated OVC's, not only their wonderful theme that you said at the top of the meeting today, the Victims' Rights Week theme, but the fact that they are, I think that we all have the opportunity to focus on victims' rights. And OVC also gave a shout out in Chris Rose's letter and the resource guide to the organizations that were started 50 years ago today. And I think about a half a century of victim services. And I just want to say all three of them, including DC Proud, the DC Rape Crisis Center, are still in business. And so there's been a half century victims' rights and services, but I am also working with a couple of groups where recently they've said the victims' rights field is quite nascent and young. And so it makes me think in terms of criminal justice, juvenile justice, family welfare. We are the babies on the block. And so we continue to, I think, face challenges. We continue to grow. And as you know, a big thing with me, Jen, and I love NCVLI and your work in particular, is looking at victims' rights that can actually be enforced. And I don't want to, jump ahead to something I've been thinking about getting ready for this, but we need to stop passing victims' rights laws that aren't going to be enforced. It sets victims up with these great expectations for having a voice and a choice, for being notified and all those things. And too often we pass laws where there is no funding to support the enforcement of such laws. And I just always think about, we would never say, we're going to give you your Sixth Amendment's right to a Miranda right, but only if we have the money. We would never do that, as we never should. And why we pass victims' rights without funding mechanisms is beyond me. And it's one of the reasons I stay involved in the victims field and will continue, because that's just stupid.
Yep, agreed. And I think it's, when I did legislative work, I mean, one of the things we always did was look for those unintended consequences, and don't make a promise to someone and then knowing that our system's going to break that promise every day, right? Yeah. And so that kind of does lead us into that next place. Why? So do you think that is one of the fundamental reasons why we see so many violations of victims' rights, or do you think it's kind of more of a bundle of reasons?
I think it's both. I think, traditionally, unless victims were needed as witnesses, they weren't the priority. And I say that, cautionary, it's not across the board, but a victim as a witness is a really important thing for criminal justice processes. But we need to think about the majority of victims who never report their crimes to police, and they still have the right to know what's going on and to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. And I think our field, we talk about access and equity. We have broadened our scope to recognize victims who can't report crimes, not just don't, but can't for really important reasons, as well as victims who bravely choose to enter the criminal and juvenile and civil justice systems, looking at their rights and the fact that, if they're only written on paper, it's not a right, it's just rhetoric. And so that's something that I'm just proud of NCVLI and all of the states that have been working to look at their laws and to fine tune them so they actually have meaning behind them.
And it's some of the amazing work that Meg Garvin and the folks at NCVLI have done to make these laws that are really just a piece of paper, make them jump off that paper. And how do they live and breathe? How do we give them meaning? And how do victims, know about them? Right. How do they activate them? And then how do we enforce them, right? Yeah. So incredibly important. So we've come a long way, right? We've done a lot. We've laid a lot of groundwork. But we still have so much more to do. So for you, kind of, where do you think those touch points are? Where should we be doing more? What's on the horizon? What do we need to be looking at?
So that's just such a giant question. So let me try to break it into some bite-sized pieces. As you know, last year we had the VOCA fix, and everyone's like, oh, great, VOCA's going to be just fine. I do not feel that. I feel that the needs of crime victims and survivors are greater than the capacity of organizations to meet those needs. And so we have to continue to ensure that VOCA is vital and sustained over the years. And as you know, we did pass the reauthorization of VAWA, yay!
Yes.
But VAWA is fully funded by VOCA. And so there's a cutaway right there in addition to a lot of other really important cutaways. So looking at ways that we can continue to guarantee the sustainability of the VOCA fund is at the absolute top of my list. I also have to say, since I've been 3 years in the mass violence arena, we have seen, I don't have to tell you, such an increase in incidents of mass violence. And I think my first thing is really looking at the fact that we have 3 federal definitions of mass violence that do not moosh with each other. I'd like to see a singular definition of mass violence. I like OVC's definition because it focuses on victim and community impact and not the number. You don't have to have 4 people murdered, which if you look back at the Boston Marathon would not qualify as mass violence. So coming up with a single definition would be good. And then also at the NMVVRC, and Meg knows this, we're looking also at the impact of mass violence on communities. You think of Orlando and Pulse, Pittsburgh, Tree of Life, the recent Waukesha, Wisconsin holiday parade mass violence crime. Communities are devastated, and we need to recognize the impact, not just on individual survivors, which is immense and drastic, but also looking at the long-term impact on communities. And then my last thing I want to say to that is I just saw today that violence in general in DC is up 25% this year from last year. I know that is consistent in many communities across the country. And so I think part of it is looking at the roots of what are the increase in violence. And I would send people to the Council on Criminal Justice because they're constantly putting out good information on what are the drivers behind violence. But our bucket is looking at the impact. A 25% increase here in DC is phenomenal for victim service providers who are struggling to identify and meet the needs of the 25% increase. And that's not just here in DC. I know it's in Pennsylvania. I know it's nationwide. So looking at how we can do more with less, which, good Lord, we are good at. We've been doing it our entire lives.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, crime is up across the board, specifically those violent, impactful crimes that are, so hard to survive, and then so hard to find those services, and then finding equitable services and finding access, getting access to quality services. Yeah, it's a tough time right now.
Yeah.
But as you've noted, victim services has always risen and has always managed to kind of to tackle these barriers and to get through and be able to provide services. The VAWA reauthorization was a monumental feat, and it shouldn't have been. It's disturbing that it was such a monumental feat, right? It was lingering and languished for how many years? It was a really
like 5 years, and 5 years of, again, 75 national organizations, everyone in the States working for 5 years, and it should have been 5 frickin' minutes. Oh, sorry. Should have been 5 minutes, and it took that long. We were all patient, and the outcome is wonderful. But that's a great example of why do we have to struggle? Yeah. It should not be this much of a struggle for victims' rights.
Exactly. And it's so important. It's why we need every individual contacting whoever they can to advocate for victim services, because these things that you think, oh, well, that's a no-brainer. Of course we would want to pass that, or of course we would want to give more funding. I think, so often people underestimate how hard it is to get common sense reform and common sense legislation.
Well said. Very, very difficult. And it's been kind of a slog for us over the last 50 years.
So what do you think the next 50 years is going to bring? What do you think the future of victim services holds?
Well, I'm going to go to the great Victims' Rights Week themes of rights, access, equity. I'm going to add the term resiliency. If I could have added one word, I think that's really important, that we sort of use this theme as our foundation for the future of our work, that we recognize the diversity of the crime victims and survivors who need our services, that we recognize that there are so many marginalized communities and underserved victims who have no idea about victim services, who don't know what victims' rights are, and who need an explanation. We got some explaining to do about what those rights mean in reality. And Jen, I want to focus, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on resiliency. And we use that word a lot. I do worry about people who've been victim service providers for years in our field, because it is difficult work. I always think about it like the sponge that you never squeeze out. And finally, your sponge is just overflowing with water. It's weighty. It's really, really difficult to overcome that. And part of resiliency is, as a profession, learning to take better care of ourselves, learning that we cannot help victims with understanding their rights and exercising them, and helping victims reconstruct their lives in the aftermath of really devastating events unless we are taking care of ourselves. And so I think of resiliency personally as a long-term advocate, but also using our great skills to look at the issue of resiliency for survivors and for communities impacted by violence, which we've already talked about has increased, and to let them know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. When you're stuck in the trauma, you're experiencing traumatic grief, it's hard to look forward. And we have a lot to do to focus on resiliency. And that's going to be, my flaming until I retire. That's going to be a big part of my focus, is individual and community resiliency.
Well, that's an incredible parting gift, right? To give the field. Every presentation that I do, if it's to professionals,
right,
I end with a slide that says you have an ethical obligation to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because if we're burnt out,
yeah,
and then we have nothing left to give, or God forbid, what we're giving could actually do harm, which is so not our intentions or motivations. But if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't provide quality services for quality support to an individual who needs it.
And think about the individuals, Jen, that you and I personally know who left the field, retired early, got chronic illness, and several who died early. And you can't tell me that these were not stress-related issues. And so, again, every time I see that happen, I get very sad, but it also propels me to focus on resiliency. And I love your quote just now that we have an ethical obligation to take care of ourselves. And we're so used to putting everyone else before ourselves. Be selfish.
Yep.
Take care of yourself. You cannot serve others unless you yourself are strong. And that's it's an important message as we look at rights, access, equity. I'm just going to put on the little frosting on the cupcake is resiliency.
I love it. And there is, so much of this work is surrounded in trauma and just traumatic injuries and desperation. There's also hope, and there is joy.
Oh, yeah.
There is so much joy that can be had in life. And when, we go through those tunnels, and more importantly, we have a guidepost through those tunnels that can light the way for us. And that's what advocates do. We've got to both be making sure that we're taking care of ourselves. So, and thank you, because you are just such a pillar of strength and so incredibly important, not just to my story, but for the whole field. And I'm grateful that we got you on a Facebook Live, so folks were able to see your wonderful face and get to know a little bit about you as a person. I want to thank Kator too from Mosaic for providing ASL. Part of what National Crime Victim Law Institute is trying to do is make sure what we're doing is also accessible. And so we want to make sure that anything that we're putting out is digestible to every and all survivor or victim who is seeking our services. So, and before we part ways, where can people learn more about you? How can they get in touch with you if they want to get involved in any of the wonderful things you're doing in DC?
So they can find me at the National Mass Violence Victimization Resource Center. That's nmvvrc.org. People can email me directly. It's very simple, justicesister@outlook. And I welcome all takers. And I would also say, if folks are coming in for the OVC Victims' Rights Week events this week, give me a shout out, because I will be at both of them.
Wonderful. Awesome. All right, everyone. So it's Monday. You got your marching orders. Find your joy. Take good care of yourself, and know that this movement is a destination and a journey all at once, right? It is our collective responsibility to ensure that victims' rights are afforded, because meaningful victim participation ensures better systems and it empowers communities. So whether you are an attorney, a prosecutor, a judge, a lawmaker, an advocate, an ally, a survivor yourself, how are you ensuring access and equity for victims? Until next time, which will be Wednesday, we'll be back here on Wednesday. To learn more about the National Crime Victim Law Institute, please visit our website at ncvli.org today. Happy National Crime Victims' Rights Week, everyone.